Hi there, Karen. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Tina. How are you today?
I'm doing well. I'm so excited to have you and to talk to everyone about marketing budgeting for small businesses. But before we get started, I would love for you to just take a minute and tell people who you are and what you do.
Oh, thank you, Tina. First of all, thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to share some insights with your audience and learn more. So let me just tell you a little bit more about me. My name is Karen Brunke. I am a 30-year veteran in marketing. I'm based out of Atlanta, but I serve clients around the globe in the field of destination marketing. And so you may be wondering, what is destination marketing? My role is to endear people to places. So whether that be a favorite vacation spot like a boutique hotel on a beach, or to a tourist attraction with your family. It may also be a restaurant that you want to go to for a special occasion or for an everyday occasion. Also, I've evolved my business to also help construction and development clients build places that really specialize in things like mixed use developments, entertainment destinations, sporting destinations. My really my business model was inspired by my experience working for Hallmark cards, the Coca-Cola company, and also an independent private school, all of which the common thread in my role as the head of marketing in each of those respective roles was to find ways to understand our audience and then attract them to these places, not just for a one-time visit, but also to help build brand fans and brand love for those places that was enduring and everlasting and led to long-term retention and loyalty.
That's so awesome, Karen. At first, I did not realize that you had worked with Hallmark cards, so that's so fun to know. Um, but also, you had pointed me to that Gartner study around marketing
Yes.
budgets and what people are doing these days and how it's changed and what that looks like. And something you just said about the theme that you've had in your business is around attracting people and retaining them, which stood out on that report to me around that's the number one thing that CMO, chief marketing officers, are looking for from their agencies, marketing agencies or marketing managers, is to pull people in the door and keep them there for longer and have those higher conversion rates purchasing over and over again from you. So I would love to pick your brain around that, because what I wanted to share with everyone is, it's hard to say how much money we should, as small business owners, be spending on marketing. It's really difficult to put a number on that that feels good, because we want a return on investment. And it does seem like attracting and retaining would be a huge return on investment. So I'd love to talk about how those two things go together and how much money we should be spending as small business owners. I really kind of invited you because I am selfishly, because I want to know this for myself as well, doing year end and looking back at the expenses that have that things that we've spent money on over the year, and trying to put things in buckets and say, did I spend enough here? Should I be pulling back here? And what should that look like? So would love to get your advice on, from a small business owner, in order to grow, because that's what we're all headed toward. If we want to grow our business, how much money should we be spending in our marketing budgets?
Wow, there's so much to unpack in your question. And it's so interesting. So often I serve as a fractional chief marketing officer for my clients. And so inevitably, I'm always striving to find ways to help them attract people to their brands. The other footnote here is not just to their physical places, but also to their digital doors, if you will. And so often I'm looking at this omni-channel strategy about attracting people, whether that be to your website, to your e-commerce site, to your physical door. And so I just wanted to kind of make a footnote there that, as the evolving role of a chief marketing officer for my clients, I'm always thinking about all of the channels of which I can connect their audiences to these doors. And so, increasingly these businesses have, new doorsteps. And so the relationship that, I kind of extract there in serving my clients, because I don't know about you, but so often I find it so much easier to serve my clients than it is my own business and brand and spend. And so it may give me a little bit more objectivity to talk about how I might think about this for my clients, and then we'll make those applications to then our own business. And so, I think just one of the things that I like to do is, instead of looking inward first, how do I look outward and learn more about what does marketing investment look like across multiple businesses. And that's what led me to the Gartner study. So I'm an avid learner, a curious learner, to just help me, appreciate what is going on for chief marketing officers in the financial services industry or travel and hospitality, which is more native to what I do. And so, what I learned from that study is that, these chief marketing officers are recognizing the complexity of marketing, whether it is marketing digitally or, across just so many channels, the need and for, forever changing and engaging content, the need for these specialties that can help you amplify your content. How do you, build a marketing voice with transparency? How do you make sure that if you're operating as a small business owner that, you're maybe working, 12 hours a day, but how do you keep your shop open 24/7 with chat features? And so increasingly there's so many choices for marketers. But, ultimately you have to make those strategic choices that are the best for you. And so it all begins, I think, with a clear strategy. So not just guiding my customers and my clients around a clear strategy, but then what are then the resources that I need to make the most choiceful, um, tactical plans and et cetera, that ladder up to growth. And so, I'm always a fan of starting with your strategy, not just for my clients, but ultimately this all, parallels to my own business. But in choosing that strategy, there's so many choices. What are the right choices? What are the things that I want that are fundamental to my growth plan for my business? So I'll kind of shift now to how I think about my business. So I'll look outside to gain insights to what other best practices other marketers are spending, for their growth plans. And then it gives me these benchmarks. It gives me these ranges for how do I think about my own business. And so in general, most chief marketing officers that I found through the Gartner study are spending anywhere from 8 to 12% on marketing. Now, granted, that varies dependent upon the industry. So if I just begin to look at that as a starting point for how I want to resource my own business, I think that, you can start with what do you want to do, but really you have to start with your strategy. Every great business plan, every great choice starts with a real clear strategy that helps you to try and determine what are those portals for growth. And then what are those marketing plans, whether that be the channels I need to invest in, the content, the branding, the messaging, the technology, innovation that I need to invest into, my strategic plan. And so what I'll share with you is that, so you start with the strategy, you begin to, create what your pathways to growth look like. But inevitably there's still this like sea of so many choices that you can make. And so one of the things that I also lean into, in addition to outside best practices, is that I had the privilege of leading marketing for Coca-Cola, specifically for the world of Coca-Cola, where I led all of our global brand marketing. I led our sales and events, community marketing, government relations, the whole kit and caboodle. But I mention that because, that was an 11-year of experience of really working with budgets. And quite honestly and candidly, Tina, I'll share with you, most marketers in my business aren't wired for finance and aren't wired for performance. And so what I quickly recognized early on in my career, which was a little bit of a blind spot for me, was I knew that I needed to equip myself with an understanding of how do I marry marketing with performance management? How do I marry marketing with revenue growth and revenue generation? And so I think that was fundamentally one of the biggest areas of my growth that gifted me with then partnering with finance, but also seeking models that could help me be a better performance driven marketer,
Yeah.
versus just a marketer for creativity's sake, and trying all the fun things like pay-per-click ads and geo-targeted ads and international marketing spends. There's certainly a way to go about that, but I learned that it's just not very resourceful and not very smart and wise, as I was entrusted with the Coca-Cola company's dollars in that case. And also now in my own business, spraying and praying doesn't really work. So let me just kind of pause there and just see if there are some interesting connections there and where you might want to go deeper for your viewers.
I just love this spraying and praying doesn't work. It is what a lot of us have done in the past and that we continue to do for ourselves more than for our clients, I think. But we have great ideas. Business owners and marketing people are idea generating machines. And so I think a lot of times we come up with these great ideas and then we just blast them off, or they get stuck before they even get implemented. So sometimes we don't even spray, we just pray.
So true.
And then you're like, hey, why isn't there any revenue growth here? So I love the idea of spraying and praying doesn't work. So there should be some accountability for the marketing budget that we're using, that there is some sort of ROI. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is getting a 5 to 10 times your ROI within 12 months. I don't know if that aligns with what you see or what you've experienced even at Coca-Cola, because I think we can learn a lot from the bigger companies that have a lot of money to spend. And we can use some parallels in our smaller marketing companies, even if it looks a little bit different.
That's so insightful. And I launched StoryMap Marketing, my destination marketing consultancy, in the middle of COVID during August of 2020, and
And you
you
made it.
know, and I made it, right. So I look at this 3-year milestone, and a lot of it is what we call test and adjust. But I knew that I knew just as I was putting my own money into it, I wasn't being entrusted with corporate funds anymore with my business model. I knew that I had to be even more resourceful and planful and intentional with what was my path to forward, and then how did I want to create a construct for how I wanted to create my budget. And so what I did is I actually leaned into what, even at Coca-Cola, we looked at best practices that were outside of our 4 walls to really kind of help shape our thinking. And one of the things that we adopted, that I actually adopted in my business model early on, was Google's innovation model from probably 2011, 2015 timeframe. And we really not only found it fascinating, but we adopted this, what we call the 70-20-10 model. Now, within the context of Google, it was their innovation model. And you could call it an innovation model. But for us, it also became kind of a marketing resource allocation model. And so let me unpack that really quickly for you, because it did help me also set the foundations for my business plan for StoryMap Marketing. So the first 70% of your resources should be dedicated to those core initiatives, your bread and butter initiatives that that are going to be these proven performers to delivering value, however you define value in your business. And so these are these tried and true best practices. And certainly I had been gifted with leading destination marketing organizations, but also initiatives that gave me some insight. But I'd also tell you that I did a lot of external research and benchmarking to help me shape what are those tried and true best practices that would serve me out of the gate with StoryMap Marketing. And so then the next 20% of your resource allocation should be spent in what we call these adjacent innovations or adjacent initiatives or portfolio. So think about it like this. You think about everything you do as a portfolio, much akin to how you want to diversify your portfolio, not put all your eggs in one basket. You start with those core initiatives, but the next 20% of these adjacency initiatives are kind of born out of those tried and true practices, but they're evolutionary. They are kind of innovating off of those tried and true initiatives. So let me just give you one quick example. So when I was leading the world of Coca-Cola, our bread and butter were just general admission tickets. those 16, 18, and $20 general admission tickets to get into the world of Coca-Cola. We knew that it was working, but we leaned into some insight from our consumer research that helped us understand that some consumers, not all of our guests, they wanted to learn more. They wanted a deeper experience. They wanted something more personalized. They wanted to have something a little bit more, entertaining if they had special clients or special family members coming into town. And so with that, out of that was born a VIP tour ticket type. We had to, go through and price it differently, staff it differently, look at some swag and some premium experiences that would delineate and differentiate it from that general admission ticket. So that may just kind of be one of those examples of a different ticket type. It still fit within the portfolio. And over time, it became a really great revenue generator for us, and it grew year over year. So we've covered the core innovations, the adjacent innovations, and resource plans. And then the last 10%, what I'd love to do is just take 10% of my resources every year and innovate. These are, whether you want to call it disruptive innovations, whether you want to call it transformational, these are those initiatives that really require you to have a little bit more risk orientation. And if you're working with a large group, it really does require a culture of risk orientation, permission to fail, and permission as a business owner, in my case, to give myself permission to learn from it and say, I tried it. I didn't spray and pray. I, curated this initiative with intention. I, leaned into some best practices, but I moved with speed. I took risks. I took chances that normally, weren't in my DNA. And then what I do is that then I go back and I evaluate, how does that ladder up to my growth plan? Do I want to keep it? Do I want to toss it? And then how does that then begin to fuel my future business planning? Mm-hmm. So I just want to give you a glimpse into the 70-20-10 model. But, in general, I started with a 10% of my own marketing budget as a small business owner for my marketing efforts. And I applied the 70-20-10 model to the way I go about, kind of in a general form, breaking down and resourcing it. I hope that's helpful.
That's wonderful. And that makes my mind go in so many different places of how that 70-20-10 can be applied across the board. When we think about niching, usually brings a lot more revenue and helps us grow our margins. And thinking about like 70-20-10, because people feel trapped by niches sometimes, maybe that's a good model to try to use there. So my mind's going a million places with that rule, but I want to back up for a minute and sort of get this these ideas that you're talking about, and what does that look like in an implementation format for a marketing or a small business owner. And what it makes me think of is going back to that the number you cited earlier, the 8 to 12% of revenue. I'm guessing 8 to 12% of revenue that's coming in your doors gets spent on marketing. For these companies that are in that study, does that hold true for a small business?
It goes back to that test and adjust. I mean, when you think about 10% of your revenues, it's a big gulp of a number, right? And so the permission that I want to give everybody is that it's okay to start small and gradually build. And so, I think about, my World of Coca-Cola experience, the budget that had been given to me whenever I first went into the role was around 6 to 7%. Mm-hmm. It was through that testing and adjusting and recognizing that our performance wasn't meeting expectations for the P&L. And so it was incumbent upon us as a marketing team to build the case as to why we needed more budget. And it was through that that we linked the increase for budget. And we changed the language. We looked at it as an investment in our P&L growth. And again, that goes back to that marriage and that recognition that marketing is more than just, great campaigns and copy and messaging and ad buys and, SEO and then some. But it was really incumbent upon us to understand, how does for instance, how does that marketing budget and that spend on our branding and our visual identity system and on our sales materials, how does that then contribute to the growth? And in the case of World of Coca-Cola, just for a quick analogy, it was attendance. But then what we did is that we started to recognize and peel back. All right, for every guest that came through the door, what was the spend per guest on average? And so we call that a per cap. And so that per cap is the price of the admission of the ticket, the price for parking, broken out, the price for food, the price for retail. And so what I've started doing in my own business then is looking at every one of my clients within this per cap mindset, and the recognition that yes, I may be spending, you know, $30,000 of marketing and that's more like what I've gotten to in year 3. Just to be really, really candid, I started off small with more of that 8%. You know, the aim was 10%. I started at 8, then I've gradually gone to 9, 10%. And so it's okay to build it up as you go, but I think it's important that we learn to attach. All right, I made this investment of $30,000 across branding, across QR codes, across graphic design, across my sales funnels, across my website, my digital team, and they can spend. I mean, you look at all those things, but then over time, you begin to scale and spread that across your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also recognize that then over time, I'm assigning a per cap to those clients. So that one pitch deck that, helped me acquire a client that has now brought in multiple thousands of dollars into my portfolio, that's where I look at, that's my bread and butter. That's my 70%. That's, that core business that I want to continue to curate, if you will. And so I'm just more and more aligning that investment with what the returns are across my client portfolio. And I think that just, it makes sense, but I will tell you, it requires some structure and some diligence. And all of that is born out of that real clear strategy. There was a great phrase that I learned from some of these, like, I'll call them more vintage sales reps whenever I was at World of Coca-Cola, or at the Coca-Cola company. And they're like, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And it's, again, without a plan, you can just get so distracted with the next shiny object, right? We've all done it. I'm still guilty of it. But I think that we have to just put this test, in front of us to make sure, okay, wait a minute. Does this ladder up to my strategy? Is this the highest and best use of my 8% marketing budget, my 9% marketing budget, my 10% marketing budget? And so it's this constant, not just planning, but it's also this measurement. It's this calibration. And it's also recognizing, what, that was not a wise investment. I'm going to abandon that next year. And it's okay. You have to just kind of suck it up and move on. And that's okay.
Okay, I love so many things about this because number one, I'm a huge profit first fan. So if I can know that I should be setting aside 6%, 8%, 12% of my revenue into a bank account that is strictly marketing dollars, then it also makes me feel okay about hiring a professional photographer to come photograph me at an event because there's money in that bank account that's allocated for that thing. So I don't feel guilty for spending marketing dollars on myself anymore. Sometimes, especially, women will look at things and will be like, oh, I can't buy that dress. I can't buy those shoes because that's for me. And I have to take care of the rest of the household. And say we get stingy when it comes to ourselves. But if we actually budget that ahead of time, and then you don't feel guilty about it because you're like, it's only this percentage of my revenue. I'm not overspending, because we're always worried that we're overspending for ourselves. I mean, that's me though, Karen.
Oh my gosh.
Not-
I'm so grateful for this. This is actually giving me a mirror to look at over the past 24 hours of my leading StoryMap Marketing. So I'm confronting this. I'm building a strategy for a new portfolio, a new market segment for my client to go into. And it's probably one of the most comprehensive bodies of work that I've done since I've started StoryMap Marketing. But in doing so, in building this marketing and sales strategy and revenue plan for this client, I'm recognizing, wait a minute, I'm recommending that they need to be investing in video. They need to be investing in high res photography. They need to be investing in a sales funnel. They need to be investing in, even more messaging than what they're doing right now. They need to be investing, right, to get a better return on investment. And I'll share with you, I was looking at their P&L, because one of the things as marketers that I've learned, and my encouragement is that in working with your clients, get to know what their P&L looks like, because it will give you a peer insight to the way that they budget and how you can then influence, marketing. So anyway, that being said, I mentioned this to you because I'm looking at all these things that I'm recommending to my client, but I'm like, oh my gosh, I have been putting off this proposal that I initiated when I was in that 10% growth mode last month. And I have an estimate right now that I'm looking at from a brand and design agency, because I need to evolve my visual identity system. I need photographic resources. I need to evolve my look and feel of my brand through video, through new headshots, through a 52-week content calendar. And so I need these assets to help me look as polished as I'm recommending that my client be polished.
Right.
So I recognize, so I'm with you. I'm like, why do I feel like, oh my gosh, I can't let go of that? And that's, wow, that's like whenever I look at all these assets and the evolving and the branding, I'm like, wow, $5,000, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. However, when I think about 52 weeks of content,
Mhm.
elevating my brand, because brands have equity, and we've got to start thinking about ourselves and our companies as brands and
Yeah.
building them up versus just P&Ls or just the bottom line.
Yeah. So
And I
what
think COVID taught us that, right? COVID taught us that if you will position or be positioned.
right.
And so, how do you continue? You have to, it's a must that you continually elevate your game and elevate your brand and your positioning in the marketplace. Especially if you want to have that authority and that credibility with your clients to make those same recommendations.
Yeah, and I think that just brings back to like, okay, profit first is the way that I do it, but the real point here is that you have to have a budget, and if you have a budget, then you have permission to spend it on that resource. And how you allocate it, then we go back to, okay, here's the practical number two. So first, it's have a budget. Number two is then you can talk about allocation. So 70, 20, 10 is what you're recommending based on what you did at Coca-Cola and what you saw at Google and what is working in your own marketing business. So 70%, we can think of things in terms of like your website. So we believe we are story branders, and we believe that marketing roadmap that they give, which is website, messaging, downloadable lead generator, and email campaigns, those are really pretty standard, and that probably should be considered in your 70%. If you don't have it, or if it needs to be revamped, spend that money on that. And then you've got 20% to do the things that come out of that. Maybe it's SEO, maybe it's some social media channels, some content marketing that go along with that same message, or maybe it's investing in talking to your clients before that, so that the message and the words that you're using are right. So those are some tertiary where you can start spending maybe 20% of the budget toward those items. And then 10%, maybe it's shiny object syndrome. Maybe you have permission to pursue some shiny objects, or maybe it's very intentional. Like, these are the other items I'm going to pursue, like starting a podcast, or what are some other mailers, other items that might come to mind?
Mailers, absolutely. And also, I would just share, one of my innovation 10% this year was pursuing a partnership with an agency in my field that does experiential marketing. And doing that, I volunteered to co-author a lead generating PDF for their company that gave me not only a spotlight on StoryMap Marketing, but this was one of those opportunities that allows me through their audiences to reach Fortune 500 brands. So this was, so that was looking at co-authoring, authoring, being a TED Talk speaker. I've also, I know that seems like a small thing, but I want to, as I also prepare to scale my brand globally, not just locally and nationally. Also looking at making investments in QR codes so that I can determine and become more accessible. How do I also measure and track where those leads are coming from to my website via, it's just something I'm testing. It's a small thing, I know, but it's just one of the little tactics that I've added to the arsenal that's a little bit of a stretch for me as I also try to pursue a more premium client. So pursuing a premium client was really my objective as part of my 2022 business plan. It was here's where I want to innovate. I want to your point about profit first. And I just so admire, that philosophy that drives your business. And you've really taught me so much, about your philosophy and how it's working for you and your clients. And it's really inspired me. And it did so because it really helped me with the inspiration for looking at how do I expand my brand globally? How do I innovate with more strategic projects where I can command a higher, fee for my services, and kind of round out that 70-20-10 model, but still look at a revenue and profit driving, business philosophy. So I just want to say thank you.
Thank you. I'm so glad that it's so helpful for other people. And I do hear that from more than just you, because it is a way to help sort of budget and allocate and feel good about the money that you're spending instead of just feeling like you're spraying and praying when you could be getting it more right than wrong, but you don't even know because you don't have an eye on it. So
So true.
that's one of the things that makes it so much easier. But two of the things that you just said, and I just want to highlight it for everyone. What you talked about was reaching that premier client, which is all about identifying your audience. Like you have to know who your best clients are. So when we were talking about, the StoryBrand marketing roadmap talks about that website and lead generator, but they're not effective if you don't know who they're for and if you're not using the right words on them. And so one of the things, and again, I go back to that 70-20-10 rule that you're talking about, maybe that 20% that's expanding on your core pieces is discovering that audience and making sure you've got them right. One of the things that we use for that is the pumpkin plan, because they have this beautiful top client assessment where you rank people first by how much money they're spending with you, which you had talked about per client capita. And so you rank them first there, and then you also start to rank them on things like cringe factor and core values and whether they meet those or not. And that helps you identify exactly who your clients are so that you can write the right message and know that your message is being very effective. When you're spending that 80% of your marketing, it's going to the right places and it's very effective when it does. But then that other thing that you talked about was a partnership. And I love that because it's one of the ways that we've been able to expand faster, greater, with higher margins than almost any other marketing investment we've made, is to find those strategic partnerships that can help expand what we're doing without having to work harder. So that's been so effective for us.
Wow, how smart. I love that. And, just kind of the two things that I'll, click up from what you just spotlighted, Tina, is on the audience. We had a saying at Coca-Cola that I still just thread through everything that I do today. And it's that everything begins and ends with your consumer.
Mm.
So, from a story brand perspective, you could say the character in your story, if it's, you could also interchange audience, or your customer, depending upon your business type. But knowing them and understanding their needs, their wants, their challenges, and how you're going to position yourself as the solution to their problem is absolutely fundamental. And I think it really inspires us, on one of those elements of our investment of time and energy and investment is to just also make certain that you're making those, that investment into understanding your consumers. And, so whether that's, ensuring that you're spending a lot of time with them, you're taking them out for a social, things like dinners and getting to know them personally. It's understanding their biggest challenges, and having empathy with those and learning side by side with them. But I cannot underscore the significance of investing your time and listening into everything about your customer or consumer to gift you with clarity, to gift you with resourcefulness, to gift you with the ability to create a wise plan. Because, it never feels good whenever you miss the mark because maybe you didn't pay enough attention. That's never fun. And, none of us want to look back with regret, at all. I really admire your philosophy about partnerships. It is, it allows you to think about, letting go a little bit, right? We're not the expert at everything. There's no such thing as perfection. And so, that overused phrase of 1 + 1 = 3 really does apply whenever you look at the exponential value of partnerships. And that's been a big part of, as I mentioned, for me, my innovation platform, which was to attract more premium clients. I actually have two partners. They're both agencies, but they're agencies with complementary specialties. And one of the things that we had to work through was making sure that our time and talent and treasures were complementary, not competitive.
Mm.
And it's been a very intentional effort. But again, what you focus on expands. And so my encouragement to everybody is to, what is that one, strategic goal that you have that you really want to be diligent about in 2023 as you're going through your business planning, as you're going through, how do I amplify my business? How do I get better? And I guess, unintended or, unexpected value in that is that I feel like I'm going back to school. I feel like I'm learning through my partners and I am just strengthening my muscle, especially with both of them being positioned with these Fortune 500 clients, but also some growing niche clients that are expanding my ability to serve better, serve more strategically, serve with higher fees. And sometimes it's not a higher fee. But sometimes it's that I'm willing to take that, that cut to be able to work on a Fortune 500 brand. Maybe I'm not getting that, the first initial premium fee, but I'm getting the chance to work on a project that has global recognition.
Mm.
And I'm, as part of that, earning the right to advance. I love that phrase in sales. When you think about earning the right to advance in any relationship through sales, the same thing applies with marketing and with our businesses. Is that sometimes you got to take these iconic projects. Maybe it's not for that, high profit, that huge revenue up front, but then you are putting that experience in your coffers and in your arsenal. And then whenever you're out there pitching, to be able to use the name of a global brand as part of your portfolio, that has equity. And so I may have forfeited, $5,000 or $10,000 on this project, but whoa, I got to tell you, it was an investment in my brand reputation.
Mm.
That it also has helped me attract some of these larger agency partners. And so sometimes there are these short-term sacrifices for long-term gains that also ladder up to, the notion of your pumpkin plan. And so it's not always easy. And sometimes you do have to make those choices as a small, business. But I'll tell you, Tina, one of the first things I experienced in my first year, I don't know if you experienced this, but I came off of a 21-year career with Coca-Cola and Hallmark cards, as I like to call them, the original social media. Um, and it was a great experience, but people thought, oh, this is great. I'm going to get this bang for buck. She's a hungry, desperate consultant, so I can get her for cheap. And that really struck me. And I thought, no, I'm never going to position myself. I think I had to figure out what I'm worth. And so I part of this exercise in determining budgets does kind of get to the underpinning of it. The undercurrent of that is really investing that time in who you are, what do you stand for, and what's your worth. And that's a very vulnerable exercise. It's laced with so many layers and introspection and, unbandaging old scars. But ultimately, when you can get that clarity, you're giving yourself a gift and that confidence that you need to serve your clients and to really optimize your ability to drive revenues and profits. But you kind of peeling back the onion, that's a little bit of some words of wisdom that I would give to everybody, to determine who you are and who do you want to serve, and what's your personal and human philosophy that gifts you in this exercise that really fuels budgeting. So I'll just kind of put a pin on that note, because that's a whole other layer, a whole other conversation.
I love it though, because I feel like we've all needed like business owner therapy a little bit, because this money thing and the value, like how we are constantly talking about how valuable we are, and it feels like we as humans, like you, Tina, are only this valuable. And it's so intertwined where what people will be willing to pay you and how much time you're spending on it equals what you as a human being are worth, is what we get
Mm.
mixed up in. And I think that's not true. We've got to unravel ourselves from our business and say, no, that the thing I'm offering, the service that I'm offering is worth this much money. Me as a human being, I'm worth,
Mm.
it's more than anyone could ever pay, right? So detangling
Yes.
ourselves is a whole therapy session.
Mm. It it is, and what you just really inspired, Tina, is that whole idea of, as you create your identity, you also in doing so are creating what you want to say yes to. And
Ooh,
I
yeah,
think what's also so equally important is what you say no to.
that's right.
And no can be hard, right? Because we're striving for yes, we're striving for more, we're striving to achieve that goal. Yet there is enormous value in walking away from what your gut says after that discovery session that, is this really my ideal client? Is this align with my values? Is this a client in line with value with the values of integrity and collaboration and respect um and just partnership? And some of those, I've yikes, sometimes you have to learn to say no to things. You're like, wow, that would have been an important driver to my monthly, budget. But then I also think about the negative repercussions to my energy, to my worth, to quite honestly, if you look at your value on an hourly basis, then you think about I'm going to be spending incrementally more hours on this client for little. And so just my encouragement is to take that time to reflect on, is am I not only worthy, but is this client worthy of me? And
Ooh.
ooh, that feels a little arrogant to say that. It
No.
it does, but that's not the intention. The intention is, or the intention rather, is to just be very thoughtful and just mindful, and also just ask yourself the question: is this how I want to live my life? Right? Kind of to your point about detangling business from personal, we're one and the same. And so, how do we ensure that we are pouring who we are into our businesses versus pouring our business into who we are?
Ooh, yeah,
Um,
I love that. So that just makes me think of so many things that we could talk about forever, Karen, because there's so much wisdom here that we've learned. Look, we've earned our stripes. We've learned this through the school of hard knocks and experiences, and to be able to share this with other people. I love that you're here and that you're doing this. But if I could sum up what we're talking about with some practical things that people can do when they're walking away from hearing what we're talking about today, I think it's, you need a budget for your own marketing. And you need to know, if you're a marketer that's serving someone else's, you need to understand what kind of budget you're working with. So that's number one. And we're thinking that it's somewhere, start small if you'd like, but somewhere between 6 and 12% if you're in the mind to grow your business, and have that set aside using something like Profit First or the envelope system like Dave Ramsey does, like whatever it is, set that aside
yes.
so that you're giving yourself permission to use it. So that's maybe number one. Number two, I think that we keep coming back to is knowing your audience. You've got to know them in order to reach them well, in order to have the most efficient use of those marketing dollars. And then part three, I love this 70-20-10 rule because it does give us some freedom and flexibility to have fun with things that might be outside the core, since we have so many ideas as business owners and marketing managers and creatives. So
True.
that gives us some flexibility to be innovative and do different things. And I love that. So that of that marketing budget, you can allocate it accordingly, 70-20-10, or somewhere around that. Find what works for you, because you're advocating testing. So that's great as well. And then finally, it's an investment. I love this thought. You need to think of it as an investment so that you're looking on what are you getting as a return. And one of the things that struck me during one of the last pieces that you were talking about is a return doesn't have to be dollars. It could be that brand elevation that you were talking about, the exposure, which leads to more dollars eventually. But what you're looking for, your goals and the return that you're looking for should probably be predefined so that you know if you're hitting that mark or not. And then you can look down the road like, did this have the impact that I thought it was going to have? And sometimes the answer is going to be no. So maybe the last practical piece of information that we can share with everyone is it's okay to fail. You absolutely will, and chalk it up to a learning experience and move forward.
Wow. What an incredible recap. I genuinely appreciate that because I think it's going to serve, those listening, well. And, there's so many things, so many choices that we are surrounded with. But what I just appreciate is you being a beacon to help inspire others, to learn from others, so that we can just gain a little bit of insight. My husband often says, if I can just get one little bit of insight from every podcast or webinar I see or every book I read, then I'm, all the better for it. And so I just, as one curious learner to a great teacher, I just want to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity just to share a little tidbit of my story. And I hope that there's just one little nugget that's inspiring against the backdrop of those five, just great cornerstones that you just summarized.
Oh, I think it's going to be great. And I am such an avid learner too, Karen, and you've taught me so much. And I just love working with you. So this is a big love fest from one to another.
Big
And
love fest.
we're happy to be here if you can't tell. But any final words for everyone listening or watching today that you'd like to share?
Ooh,
How can they get in contact with you? That might be a great place to leave.
sure. That's great. I was thinking of another message, but yes, viewers and your listeners and your friends and colleagues can contact me. Visit my website at storymapmarketing.com. You can also reach me via LinkedIn, or feel free to, reach me just via phone or text. I'm an open door. So 404-408-2109. I look forward to a conversation. And I think just the last maybe word I might share that just really kind of fell on my heart was just um, kind of this idea of be good to yourself. Just take a moment and thank yourself for all of the choices that you have made. This was never intended to be perfect. But just, give yourself the grace to learn and to give and to be, and just be happy in what you're doing. So I think just this idea, this abundance of gratitude, not just for those you serve, but just, take a moment and thank yourself, and praise yourself for a lot of good work and a lot of good choices that have led you to this point.
Oh, that's so wonderful since we're closing out the year too. That's a perfect ending for the year to just say thank you. I'm grateful we made it through another year. We still exist. If you still exist as a business after the pandemic and all of that, there is a multitude of gratitude that you should express to yourself because you did make it through this journey and you're only going to be stronger next year if you're doing things like what we're talking about and listening to interviews like this, trying to learn from other business owners who are doing it well. I think you're ahead of the pack. So happy to have you guys with us and so grateful for you for watching.
Oh, I appreciate you so much, Tina. Thanks for having me. And I look forward to our next chat and opportunity to work together.
Absolutely, Karen. It's great to have you. See you next
Great.
time.
Be well. Ciao.